Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video day. And today the Houston Rockets have announced their schedule for the NBA in-season tournament. And this was something I really enjoyed last year for the Houston Rockets when the Rockets got the four, everybody had their four in-season tournament games. But when the Rockets played their four in-season tournament games last year, I even went to one of the games, there were only two in Houston, but I went to one of the games against the Pelicans, and that was a really entertaining game. It was a late fourth quarter comeback for the Rockets. Fred VanVleet hit a couple clutch shots down the road for the Rockets, and honestly, if you ask me after this season's over, as the season's already been over, after a couple months after the season's been over, I would probably say that's one of my favorite games. That's definitely my favorite game that I went to this year for the Rockets, because it was great circumstances, it being an in-season tournament game, and I believe that was the first in-season tournament game, and we saw such a great game, and the Rockets won, and I was there. I think that was one of my favorite games last year, definitely my favorite game that I went to last year out of maybe 4 or 5, so I think that was a great game against the Pelicans last year. There were a couple of really good games. I know there was a loss for the Rockets, but it was a really good loss. It was against the Clippers in L.A. James Harden had like a game-winning 4-point play. The Rockets blew a lead, unfortunately. It was just really unfortunate right there, but that's, the Rockets had a thing last year where they really struggled to close out ball games on the road, and I think that's going to change this year, which will make the Rockets a better team. But that was a really close game. There were a couple other closer games for the Rockets in the in-season tournament. I remember they beat the Nuggets last year in the in-season tournament, which was a great win. And I know their final loss in the in-season tournament was the Dallas Mavericks, which was a really close, great game. So most of the Rockets in-season tournament games, like 3 out of 4, were all great, good, close, down-to-the-wire games. I think the only game that wasn't close was the Denver game, surprisingly. But the in-season tournament treated the Rockets well last year. They went 2-2. I don't think really anybody expected the Rockets to go 2-2 in the in-season tournament. I didn't even expect the Rockets to go 2-2. As a Rockets fan last year who was excited for the season, and I told everybody the Rockets are going to be better than you think. I remember I told people the Rockets are going to win around 35 to 40 games this year. And they ended up winning 41. But I was someone who was not confident in the Rockets in the play-in tournament. Not in the play-in tournament, in the in-season tournament. And the only reason I thought that way was because of just the fact that it was a hard schedule. Facing the Clippers in L.A., facing the Mavericks in Dallas, facing Denver and New Orleans. I remember the only game I said the Rockets would win in the in-season tournament was against the Pelicans, one of the games they did win. I was expecting them to go 1-3 or 0-4 in the in-season tournament, and the only reason I thought that was because of the hard schedule. And going into this year with this schedule coming out pretty soon, we know the 4 games that the Rockets will play in the in-season tournament. And we knew the matchups. We just know now we know the order of the matchups, what time these games are going to be, and in what order they are. So it starts off against the Los Angeles Clippers, and all of these games are on League Pass. And I got to say, it upsets me a little bit that the Rockets, none of these games are on national television. I know the Rockets are, coming off being the 11 seed, but I think the NBA last year really, really messed up not showing some of their young teams, and I think it really haunted them. And so far early on in these schedule announcements of the season, not even I don't even think you could say 10% of the regular season's been announced. Maybe you could say 15% of the national television games have been announced so far, and you're seeing a lot of showcasing for the young teams who did not have a lot of national television games for how good they were. And the certain teams I am talking about are the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I remember someone last year who spoke big on this was Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley throughout the whole year was saying, why we're seeing the Lakers and the Warriors every week, or these other teams that are struggling to stay in the play-in, when you got young teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are playing some great basketball, and they're not getting any attention on national television. And that was the case last year. Yeah, sure did they get some, attention last year on national television. But for, one team in the Thunder who were the 1 seed, and then Minnesota the 3 seed, and we're a top 2 seed for most of the season. That's you don't see that often where teams that good are not getting that much attention on national television. And their state is, they're in the season before is just like the Rockets. The Rockets were outside of the play-in tournament, but the season before, the Thunder were the 10th seed in the Western Conference. I believe Minnesota was like the 9th or 8th seed in the Western Conference. I really see the Rockets potentially being like what Minnesota or Oklahoma City was this past season. With how tough the West is, I don't think they'll be as good as OKC or Minnesota was last year, being the 1 or 3 seed. But I could see them being a 7 or 6 seed potentially this year if they stay healthy and improve on the road like they were at the end of the season. And if they can do that, they're gonna be a lot more successful this year. And I don't know if the Rockets are going to get a lot of attention on national TV. Going into the season last year, the Rockets only had a total of 2 national television games, and both of them were flex changes. They had a ESPN game in Houston against the Clippers, and they had a TNT game in Oklahoma City against the Thunder. These were not originally, broadcast. These were not supposed to be national televised games. These were games that were, these were games that were not supposed to be national televised, but they changed it. The Rockets didn't have any national televised games going into the season. And then, then eventually later in the year when they were playing better, they got to face the Clippers and the Thunder. Yeah. I don't see the Rockets getting a bunch of national television games. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same amount, whether it's like 2 or 3 potentially. And you're not seeing any national televised games in these games. And I think the first one, right off the bat, is a great chance for a national television game. November 15th, the first in-season tournament game, the Rockets will face the Clippers in Houston, November 15th, 2024 at 7 p.m., That would be a great Friday night national television game. James Harden returning to Houston in the in-season tournament. After the game we saw last year between these two teams in the in-season tournament, the game last year between these two teams was amazing. It was so interesting. So to see James return to Houston in a crucial game in the in-season tournament in Houston, going up against his former team, that is a great headline right there as a national television game. But you know who's probably in that slot? I wouldn't be surprised if, in that slot is probably the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors getting the national television game on that Friday, November 15th. But, wouldn't surprise me. That's a great potential ESPN game. Then the next week, a week from November 15th, the Rockets will have their second home game in the in-season tournament against the Portland Trailblazers. So this year, it is 2 home games and then 2 road games. Last year, they started off with a home game in the in-season tournament and then went to a road game, then a home game, and then a road game. So it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This year, to cut down, I guess, they're weeks apart, so it doesn't really cut down travel. But to make it easier, you start off with 2 home games in the in-season tournament, and then you have 2 road games. So the 2 home games, you got the Clippers and the Blazers, and then on November 26th, the Rockets would play the Minnesota Timberwolves at 7 p.m. in Minnesota. On December 3rd, which is another Friday, the Rockets will play the Sacramento Kings in Sacramento at 9 p.m. All League Pass games, or if you live in Houston, Space City Home Network. So let me know your thoughts on the Rockets in-season tournament schedule being announced. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and peace out. Go Rockets.